Hello, I'm Tom Deittrich, and I'm the director of the Intelligent Systems Research Group in the School of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. Our group works on problems of data-enabled science and engineering. So we start typically with big data and help people collect data. We then fit models to that data using machine learning techniques. And then we also take those fitted models and try to optimize plans or policies from those models. I want to give you some examples of the kinds of things we do. So I've organized it in terms of this pipeline, starting with data collection and extracting information from data, then fitting models to that data, then optimizing policies. We help people collect data efficiently, and so we've been collaborating with a group here at Oregon State that works on bacterial fuel cells, and they need to optimize the materials in these cells, which involves manufacturing nanomaterials. And so the question was, we want to design an experiment to try to manufacture a particular material, then test it and see how well it works, then design an improved experiment. Now, traditionally in the experiment design literature, you specify, I want exactly a material with this composition, and then is manufactured. But the difficulty in nanomaterials is that you can't exactly specify. You have to give a range of, say, the concentration of one metal or the ratio of two materials, one to another. And so these are, we call them constrained experiments, because instead of designing a specific point, we design a range of constraints. And any experiment that happens to fall inside that range is a valid one. And of course, there's a trade-off between how loose you make those ranges and how informative the experiment is. You'd like to specify the most informative point to evaluate, but that's not practical. So this is an optimization problem that we have solved to help our collaborators in biological and ecological engineering optimize these fuel cells. Another example of the kind of thing we do is to extract information from signals. So often the raw data that's collected is video or acoustic data, and we really need to extract more object-type data. So Alan Fern is going to talk to you in a few minutes about some of his work in tracking football players and basketball players. So the raw data is video, and the information we want is the tracks of those players as they move around the field. The third thing we do is fitting models to data, and this is probably our core expertise in machine learning and data mining. And so we have a very active collaboration with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology under a couple of different large NSF grants to try to do continent scale modeling of the migration of birds. And so in the video that you're looking at right now, on the right-hand side is a map where there are dots kind of blinking off and on. And those are the reports of bird watchers who are participating in a project called eBird, which is run by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And the dots that are blue are cases where they reported the presence of a black-throated blue warbler. The yellow dots are where they didn't see that bird. And on the left-hand side of the video is the model that we fit to the data that's trying to explain those observations in terms of a model of the migration. So we can see that the birds are spending the winter in Cuba and Hispaniola, and then they cross into Florida and fly up the East Coast, and they're spending their summertime in New England and around the Great Lakes. At least that's what our model says. So these kinds of models can then, of course, be used to answer scientific questions about what determines bird migration, how that might change with climate change, and so on. And then, as an example of the fourth kind of thing we do is to compute optimal plans or optimal policies, typically from these models that we fit to data. And so we've been collaborating with people here in the College of Forestry and folks at the U.S. Forest Service on the management of wildfire in Central Oregon. So here's a picture of ponderosa pine forest and how we believe it should be, which is to have an open understory with these beautiful tall trees that are also very valuable from a timber perspective. But of course, for the last 100 years in the US, we have had a policy of almost total fire suppression. And the result has been that our forests now have vast accumulations of fuel on the forest floor, and when a fire is ignited, then we have catastrophic large fires that kill the valuable trees as well as everything else. So one question is, well, if we could do thinning in the forests, where should we place those thinning activities? Where should we put that in the landscape, given that we have a limited budget and so on? So we've been working in a step where we estimate the fire risk in the landscape. Then we choose optimal places to place our fire treatments. And then, of course, it's nature's turn, and nature lights fires, burns some things, and then we observe what burns, and then we plan for the next year. So those are some examples of the kinds of things we do at Oregon State University. And we have, over the years, built up a huge number of collaborations. And so here's a map of the campus, and I'm showing various names of people and projects that we've collaborated with over the last, say, 15 years as our group has grown. So we've collaborated with people in every college on campus and in many, many different departments, and also some folks off campus, say at the Hatfield Marine Science Center, and of course in several other universities around the country. So one thing that I think computer scientists are often misunderstood, or at least we feel misunderstood, because our main role is not that we create software, although we certainly do that, but computer science is really about the design of algorithms, the demonstration of their generality across multiple problems, and proofs of their correctness. And so we are the real champions when it comes to thinking abstractly. So for example, we've been studying work on modeling pollination behavior of bees and other insects. And when we think about a bee flying from flower to flower and choosing which one to land on, as computer scientists, we think, well, that's the same as when a user is presented with a list of advertisements on a web page and is trying to decide which one to click on. And we can formulate an algorithm that can explain both of these behaviors, and then even use that in the web case to optimize the order in which those advertisements are presented. But the important thing from the computer science point of view is that we have one algorithm that works across both of these problems, and if we can prove properties of that algorithm, say its correctness and its efficiency, those apply across all of those problem instances. Another example is some work we've been doing in collaboration with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, analyzing data that's coming back from the Mars Science Lab that recently landed on Mars. And the goal here is to discover in all of this data, what are the interesting data points that are coming back. And so we approach this as a kind of interestingness or anomaly detection problem, where we interact with an expert and they give us feedback on, well, that was interesting, no, that was not interesting. It turns out, again, this is equivalent to a problem that we're working on under funding from DARPA under the ADAMS program, where we're looking for insider threats in an organization. And we're looking for anomalous behavior by some employees in the company and to detect whether they might be trying to steal intellectual property or to sabotage the system or things like this. So again, the same underlying algorithms can be applied to many different problems. And our job is to come up with those generic tools that can be applied all across campus and indeed all across the country. So we've built a large group in machine learning, data mining, and planning over the last 15 years and have developed quite an international reputation. Of course, I've been here the longest, so I'm a fellow of several of the relevant scientific organizations. I am president-elect of one of those organizations, the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence, and past president of the International Machine Learning Society. OSU is quite visible in this area because with Prasad Tadapalli's leadership, we hosted the International Conference on Machine Learning here in 2007. And of course, several of the faculty are well known and have received the NSF Career Award. We collaborate with the best across the country. So of course, many of our projects are team projects with folks at MIT or Stanford, UCLA, and we have, of course, a big project with Cornell. We also collaborate with several important companies in this area, SRI International, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, NASA, and so on. And we've raised slightly over $38 million over the last 10 years to support this research, including $18 million from NSF, about 12 million from DARPA and 7 million from other sources. And we've spawned 3 startup companies during this time. So I want to leave you with a proposal. I think it's time for us to create an institute for data-enabled engineering and science that would help us improve the quantitative and computational sophistication of research projects across the campus. So our concept would be to create a scientific advisory board with thought leaders from units across the campus, such as Mark Abbott and Brett Tyler and so on. Have those folks identify and help us prioritize potential collaborative projects so that we can then work as teams with faculty across campus to really enable those faculty to do things that otherwise would be impossible for them to do. So thank you very much for your attention.